Uh, Thank you as being here. It's our monthly pen and paper thing. Any questions or uh, inbounds, except the ones I refuse to answer. But I was just looking at the first 24 hours of this week, and I want you guys to do a great 24-hour story. In the morning, I was in Balboa Park, and we did something that people have been trying to do for decades. Literally decades, trying to get the cars out of the Plaza de Panama, and we just did it. And 25 years ago, when I was on the city council and the councilman for that area, I wrote I wrote the plan that said to do this. I don't know why it wasn't done, frankly, but 25 years later, they're waiting. I guess they're waiting for me to come back. We were able to do something that, again, I don't know why it hadn't happened. Because it's sort of the intended aim of everybody, and then, of course, the proximate cause was the demise of the Jacobs plan, which for $40 million was doing something what I've done so far for free, and it'll cost some money for grading and for doing a couple of the things we want, but basically, we have got the cars out of Balboa Park. You should go up there today or tomorrow, and I mean it's an incredible change, just in a couple of days. And eventually, we'll do the bridge closing on the weekend, and when the centennial comes and the closing of that bridge in 14 has to be done for seismic retrofit, this is traffic patterns are going to have to change anyway, and people are going to have to get used to stuff. So then in the afternoon, we got the historic 5-year. This is Monday, 5-year. Labor negotiations passed, unanimous vote. And again, it's historic, not only because we have labor peace for 5 years, not only were we able to implement the basic promise of Prop B, which may never even finally have official effect, but we were able, because of a 5-year calculation of pensions, to save $110 million over 5 years. And although it's not free money, it's just a different calculation gave us $110 million. Half of it roughly going to the employees, half of it going to potholes and library hours and restoration of services. So I think a pretty historic figure, contract. The same day, of course, the city passed my budget, a balanced budget, almost rid of structural deficit. That is, the income and the outgo are almost balanced, and we'll have that done next year. So we've moved into a new era, and I have to thank my predecessor and all the Jerry Sanders and all those who had sacrificed, over the years. It was interesting that the council debate was how much we have to add, not how much or where we add, rather than where we subtract. That's a lot easier to do, a lot better fights, or easier fights. And so we're at a place where we added cops and firefighters and equipment and other public safety thing and lifeguards and library hours and my incubator for civic initiatives and a new civic imagination and money for homeless. I think it was a extremely good budget. Again, passed with a bipartisan support. And the next morning, we hired a very incredibly nationally renowned planning director, the Department of Planning and Neighborhood Restoration. Bill Fulton has a national reputation. Everywhere I was going the last 2 days, everybody said, thank you, thank you, thank you. Everybody had heard him. They read his books. The staff feels inspired. The city, I've been at several planning groups since then. The city, those groups feel rejuvenated. I think it's going to be a great a sense of a great excitement for San Diego when he starts work July 8th. And that was all in 24 hours. Not bad. And by the way, with my left hand, we cut back Canadian vessels in American fishing waters. I just want you to know that. We announced that also, that the tuna the remnants of the tuna industry, which I would like to get started on a much higher level. Had to compete with a large number of Canadian vessels in American waters, and the State Department cut that in half by treaty, and we were able to also, so that helps our little fishing boats here, but also along the whole coast of the United States. So I'm looking forward to the next few days. Questions?
They said today...
It couldn't be done, but it was done. Thank you. Next.
They said today at the Budget Committee meeting that so far only 10% of the largest hotels have issued the waivers. Do you have any comment on that? They said a lot of it's just because it's corporate and it takes a while to work it through.
Yeah,
I just want to see if you have any comment.
No, I mean, that's their problem, or that's their challenge. They're going to get the amount, they're going to get the percentage of the money that for which we get the waivers. And again, if they can't convince their own people that this is important enough, I mean, I don't, they're yelling at me for this and that, but apparently they can't convince their own hotel owners that this is important. I think that speaks for itself, shall I say?
The 2015 is going to the council committee this afternoon. You pretty well satisfied the way things are going there?
The 2015?
The Centennial.
Centennial. Oh, yeah, we're going to have, I think, and what's the date of that now? June 18th, I think. We're going to roll out the initial concepts of the whole Centennial. I think it's going to be a very exciting kind of situation. We have, when I first was elected mayor and I went to the first meeting of the Balboa Park Centennial Committee and had my first briefings, I was very depressed. I don't think they were thinking big enough. They were off on some strange tangents. They had this strange logo called Edge. Remember Edge 2015? And I mean, it just seemed like we were not shooting high enough. And we had some pretty, what shall I say, candid conversations with the committee. And we brought in a creative team called Autonomy. That's actually a 2-person team that just ratcheted up incredibly what we were going to be doing. And they had experience in international exhibitions. They did the bicentennial of Mexico City, for example. Very creative duo, which just moved up everything in terms of expectations, the breadth of of what we were able to do, the quality of the not only the art and the music and the various exhibitions that could be brought in, and so with international participation, for example, and that, of course, will take some fundraising and some. But I think the committee has been reinvigorated. The whole effort has been. I think the reaction we've had so far as the various groups that have seen the first drafts has been very exciting. And when you all see this in a week or two, about what the Centennial stage will look like, for example, and what the international sector will be like, and what some of the innovative. Looking at Innovative San Diego, a new logo which stresses the Balboa Park Centennial. The first briefing I had, by the way, I had a 30-page briefing and it didn't mention Centennial or Balboa Park once in the whole briefing. They got off onto this Edge thing that I couldn't understand whatsoever, and that cost, I don't know, a few $100,000 of great marketing, probably to the TMD. Notice, Craig, how I tie in all the issues, So I think I'm much happier now, and we have money, guaranteed some money coming in from the TMD. I think the budget, my budget, as approved by the council, had increased funds for the Balboa Park Centennial. So I think we're moving along pretty well, and I think the whole community is going to be pretty excited.
Good.
You talked about the Olympics and with the Tijuana's office. What's going on right now with that?
Yeah, I hope that Nick, within a week, we will announce our binational committee. The chairs from both and the membership from both Tijuana and San Diego. Our co-chairs are Vince Mudd and John Wirtz, and they have been working very hard on this already. I mean, they have outlines of, they have timelines, and we've been in touch with the Olympic committees, and we got drafts of logos, and all. I mean, it's really been moving along, and because people really want to pitch in and help. So we're in the process. We're really moving, even though again we'll announce the membership and the chairs officially either this week or early next week.
And it was announced, I think almost 2 weeks ago, that it was going to be published before the two committees, but
it just takes a little longer than we thought. We'll have it by next week, by either this week or next week. Takes some time to put the membership together and different stakeholders and all that.
And it's still going on separately, like you are going to pitch it for the U.S. and Mexico,
Well,
for Mexico.
I mean, it's going to be a joint committee. We may have to each one submit it to its own national committee, but it'll be the same proposal, the same. I mean, it's going to be one committee. The rules may force us to. Well, we'll see. We're still trying to deal with that, but it may require that each country act on it. Although that's a year away almost, and or more than a year. So hopefully they'll have a different sense of it by then.
Just to kind of add on to that, what does that mean for the Chargers? Obviously, as a part of any Olympic bid that's going to require a new stadium, and with the efforts by the Chargers to get a new stadium here, how does that tie in?
The way I see this whole Olympic thing, which again, it ratchets up what people see our city as able to do and what our expectations are and the excitement of something. So I was asked at every forum, and many of you were at during the mayoral election, what about the Charger Stadium? What about Charger Stadium? And there's certain answers we each develop. But now, in the context, it's not just a Charger Stadium. It's what about the Olympic Stadium? And what about opening day ceremonies? So it takes a whole different context, and maybe different kinds of support will be. It's going to be in a different context. Everything we do, if we have to build, for example, a Olympic Village for athletes. We talk about could that be affordable housing afterward? We maybe have a transportation system. Well, that's a legacy afterward. The big problem with many Olympic sites, by the way, is that they not all cities have been able or didn't plan to use what they had built for after the Olympics, and one or two of those cities, it just looks, it's just abandoned sites, whereas other cities have been very successful in using the venues for and whatever the infrastructure for other things that really help the city. So that's now how we're going to look at that. So when we talk about affordable housing, it's going to be in the context of Olympic Village. When you talk about translations, you talk about with the context of the Olympics. When you talk about the Chargers, it's going to be in the context, and that affects not only size, but where it would be. For example, just as one example, it opens up different possibilities, and the public view of it will change also.
We're also talking 2024.
Right. No, but whatever we do could be used for 2024. But remember, we're going to have a decision on 2024. Well before 2024. No, I wouldn't ask them to wait, but I wanted to put it in that context. I think we would be, until we are not, if we're not a player in that selection process, until we are not, we are going to have them be thinking about something that could be used as both.
So the city council, like you said, approved your budget, but they also added about $7.5 million in stuff to the budget, some for a sidewalk study, increasing the police academy and specifically restoring the city attorney's budget cut. And I'm just curious, is there anything in there that you plan to veto? Because specifically the city attorney cuts only have 5 votes, so if you vetoed it, potentially you would win that.
Yeah.
fight.
I mean, we have, I think, about a week to decide on that. I thought with that exception, I mean, I didn't have any trouble with any of, I mean, I thought they were, I agreed with their additions. I love the fact they added. You know, it's not, as I said, in the last 7 years, everybody was deleting. So with that one exception, I don't have any problem with it. We're going to decide whether we should veto that or not. I haven't decided that. I mean, on the one hand, I mean, the attorney was arguing how, and the majority there was arguing how, well, this is going to be major cuts. I mean, we're talking 1% of the budget. And there are more vacancies right now than to cover, you know, that $500,000 cost. So there doesn't have to be any layoffs. I mean, that was all just scare tactics. On the other hand, since it's only 1%, why fight about it? So that's what we haven't figured out yet. I mean, it's not a very big item in the scheme of things.
And then next week, the city council is going to vote on the ambulance contract to extend it. Can you talk about, you know, your decision to, you know, obviously the RFP is not going to happen, and you're seeking this extension,
Right,
to do that process or possibly take it in-house. Can you explain your decision why to do that?
I mean, there's a whole lot of things, obviously, a new mayor has to look at. And when timelines come up to you on certain items that are really big, and in the situation where you can just sort of extend an existing situation, I need time to look at the issues. I mean, there's several things that has happened to. I mean, it's happened when we extended everybody's contract here, you know, who I get to appoint or not. I need time to look at it, and they have to look at all the issues. Various contracts we've extended. So I was in on all the debates 25 years ago, but that's a long time. And I want to just bring myself up to where all the issues are. Should we, I mean, there's various models in different cities on how to do this. And I would like to have time to look at that. So we asked for a year's extension. That didn't seem to have there was no problem with that from all the regulatory bodies that have to look at it. And it gives me just time to look at the issues better.
Do you have any issues with rural metro? I mean, obviously they've been...
Well, not particularly. You know, we did have problems with them, and they had to change the contract. But obviously, if we're extending the contract, I have enough confidence in that they're running the system to keep doing that. But I mean, it has nothing to do with rural metro. It has to do with the model of how we operate. But you know, and in those discussions, they've been very cordial. I asked, for example, because it's not required by the contract, that we know their financials. How much money are they making? So we just can have a sense of what model this does. And they said they would provide it, for example. I mean, it's not called for in the contract. I mean, all our contracts in the future will call for the things like that. But, I mean, I don't know how much money they're making. I'd like to know just to help us understand the system, the economics of the system. So it had nothing to do with them particularly, although, as you know, they've done this for a long time here, but they also had some problems that we had to deal with. But I'm more interested in the models of other cities, in-house versus out-house, and the economics of all that, and the service levels. And, you know, there's other things. I mean, Obamacare has come in. I voted for it, so I see that as a positive thing. How does that affect, you know, if people have insurance, how does that affect the reimbursement? How does that affect the economics of the whole situation? I mean, there's lots of and I just haven't had time to look at it. And they agreed to a year's extension, so.
Back to the city attorney's office. They issued a memo today, or it was released yesterday, about a $100,000 check that was written from Sunroad Centrum. And basically, in the memo, they pointed out that they didn't know if it was a donation or if it was payment for the easement taken. So I'm just going to ask you if, since they brought up the question, what...
Yeah, well, the city attorney could just call me up and ask me. So I don't, he keeps issuing these public memos. Just call me up. And he said it both, and I think in the first and last sentence, if it's a donation, it's no problem. I mean, they made some donations to a couple checks actually to some important initiatives that are going on. One of which, by the way, is the Ocean Beach Veterans Plaza. Was in need of about $74,000 to design, and I had just been involved in those discussions, and they said, well, we could help do that, and to help our bike ciclostias situation. So they were donations. And I could have just told him that, and then he wouldn't have to write all this memo and issue it to you in public. And I mean, I just don't understand. He says I don't tell him anything, but he's the one issuing memos about what on hearsay. In fact, the memo started off. We hear that. I don't get it. I just don't get it. He hears things. He reads things in the paper. He issues public memos. He could just call me and ask me.
I do have so there was also an article in the UT, I think it was today, about
You don't really read that stuff, do you?
No, I try not to, but sometimes I will. About you.
You do a real newspaper.
Yeah, about you intervening in a criminal case that city attorney took up. I'm aware of another case that I'm writing about where a man was protesting about the bank bailout, and this was obviously last year or a year and a half ago. And he had chalk, and he started writing "Stop Big Banks" on the sidewalk near the Bank of America in North Park. And now he's under 13 counts of vandalism with the potential 13 years and $13,000 of restitution. So I was curious if you're aware of it, and if so, are you planning to intervene on that one too?
No, I'm not aware of it. So. By the way, on the other one, here the city attorney's office prosecuted a guy who very openly did a political act to protest the way some group was dealing with the SEALs. I mean, he wasn't a criminal. He had it all videotaped. He admitted it, and there's harassment of SEALs going on virtually daily, and the city attorney doesn't prosecute those. I just didn't understand. Why do you go after the guy who clearly has a symbolic protest of what's going on versus people who are harassing animals and it's against the law, and he won't prosecute them? So I just went to court to make that point.
Would you go to court to make the point against someone, First Amendment rights as far as well?
I'd have to look at it.
Okay.
I've been known to defend First Amendment rights. I've been known to be arrested for protesting things. So, yeah, I mean, it's not only a case by case thing, but it's the issues and how they affect what city life is here, and obviously I can't get involved in everything just because I personally like it. I mean, I am the chief executive of the city, and I'm trying to be involved in issues that reflect on the city. And right now we're in a couple of different issues, whether it's medical marijuana or the SEALs, where they are issues, and so I think I should be commenting on them and show where I stand on them.
On the medical marijuana issue, since you brought it up, we
No,
had
I
a
didn't.
story on
You just
Monday,
heard
about the enforcement of the dispensaries that are operating right now illegally under the zoning laws, and the whole history. In January, you told police in Maricopa compliance not to enforce it. Then you joined with the city council and the city attorney saying, yes, we will enforce the law, but nothing is really being done.
No, well, that last statement is still operative. Is that what Nixon used to say? The city council president, I, and the city attorney said, well, what happens in this interim? We don't have an ordinance, but an ordinance is being discussed, and we all said it's still illegal there is no zone that allows it, and we will enforce it. And in fact, the code enforcement is investigating any report that we have of those violations. So our code enforcement office is investigating those.
Well, I spent 2 hours and I just drove around to 15. I found 15 that were open.
Well, give us more than I do. We'll have code enforcement go after those.
Okay, but no prosecutions have been made since January.
it's called.
Well, I mean, I don't know that any have been operating since January either. You're telling me that some have recently opened, so we're going to look at those. I mean, I don't have any other facts. But we said it is illegal until a new ordinance is formed, and we will enforce that. There should be none, right? And we are investigating it as we speak, as far as I know. I mean, when we saw those addresses in the by news accounts, we dispatched people to those addresses.
Going back to the labor pact, how does that affect the lawsuits going against Prop B and the implementation? Obviously, the lawsuits about the mandated pension freeze.
I mean, I don't think they affect it at all. That is, the court cases are based on mostly not conferring with our employees at a proper time. And that doesn't depend on what we're doing now. I think I would have done it differently if I were mayor. I would have met and conferred with my employees as opposed to supporting an ordinance which changed their terms of employment. So I think the lawsuit is accurate. All the decisions. No. Well, we by the way, what we made moot is the savings that was promised, and that was not a mandate anyway in Prop B. It was a hope, and it was the only thing that the Prop B did was said the first proposal by the city council to the employee to the employee association shall be a 0% pensionable pay, which is what and if we did have a pensionable pay freeze for 5 years, it would result in a $1 billion savings. We implemented that. It just suggested it. We went beyond Prop B. But remember what Prop B also did was take new employees out of an old pension system, put it into a new one. That's if that were overthrown, then we'd have to go back. It's not moot. We'd have to put the employees back in the old system, and even that is a difficult thing to accomplish. I mean, is there back stuff? What do we do? All that. So it's not moot because of the new system that was set up. And if it's struck down, then there is no new system. So all the employees go back to an old system.
Well, aren't the lawsuits only addressing because the switch to the 401k isn't against the law unless the Social Security.
No, but it was mandated by Prop B. So, I mean, we wouldn't have switched otherwise. Or you'd have to. You couldn't do that without meet and conferring with your employees. So this transcended a meet and confer process. That's the basis of the suits. Not that the public can't do that, but the mayor and the council person who took the lead did not bother to negotiate. I mean, they confused their. I mean, they had a public obligation, in my opinion, to meet and confer, and they didn't. That's the basis, I think, of the suits. Scott, do you have any?
So it was the city failed to meet and confer with the impacted labor organizations. The labor organizations asserted that there was a duty to, under the Myers-Briggs Plan Act, to meet and confer because the mayor was not acting as a private. You don't have the ability for the mayor to act as a private citizen.
And I agree with that, and I think it'll be struck down. But I wanted also to say, and I said in the campaign, I was the only mayoral candidate can do it, and I delivered on it. That is Voice of San Diego here. Here I've delivered on my promise, and there's no Voice of San Diego. Check it off. I said I was the only one that could deliver, and it was not easy. I mean, we had a block on the council that didn't want to do a 5-year plan, and people brought us together, and we were able to negotiate.
Aging water mains in our city.
Are you talking about yourself or what? I mean,
oh no, I'm good. I'm sorry. Our main's good. I just came from a Point Loma area where in February there's a bunch of people displaced, and they're upset with the city now, bringing lawsuits that they just think the city didn't fulfill their promises to them regarding damage, repair, and the move back in.
I mean, I don't know the exact situation. I'm not if they're right, then we try to make it whole. I mean, because we have we have all this backlog of of deferred maintenance that we have not fixed, whether it's roads or water mains or sewage line. I mean, whatever it is, we are behind. There's just no question. I don't know the legal context and who's responsible for what, but we will do what's right here. I mean, if there was a mistake made, we have to admit it and deal with it. I just don't know the situation.
Well, how do we also deal with the water mains going forward? I mean, they seem like
Well, we're trying to put as much money as possible into everything that we have as infrastructure. We're not where we should be, but we are in this year's budget. I think we put more money in than ever before into that stuff, and we're going to continue to do more. We just had a meeting with the chairman of the infrastructure committee, Mr. Kersey, myself, Mr. Faulkner, about how to speed up all these bonds, the bond money, and the how do you increase the capacity, as they say, of our city's workforce to do that? Because if you have money, you need people to carry it out. You need attorneys. You need you need people in the human resources division to hire the people. You need the personnel department to hire people fast enough. I mean, it goes on and on and on. So we're trying to see, it's not just a bond issue. It's a whole much more comprehensive need of city activity, and we're trying to get to that point where we can go beyond what the council has done in the last few years, which I don't even think they've reached what they called a status quo budget, where you're fixing as much as is breaking down. You got to get ahead of that somehow, and we haven't been able to do it yet, and we're struggling to do it. And again, we took a third of the council to meet yesterday to try to see how we can do this together. The mayor, the council, operating together to do that.
Are you going to Comic-Con, and what are you wearing?
Security says I cannot say. I can't wait. By the way, it just a side thing, has nothing to do with what you asked, but one of my close friends for 50 years is John Lewis, a great civil rights worker, now congressman from Atlanta. He wrote his autobiography, I don't know, 6 or 7 years ago, and they just, for the purpose of kids, they turned it into a comic book. So he's coming to Comic-Con, and we will have a nice civil rights reunion here. But it's a really interesting time, I'm told. And I didn't get my tickets fast enough, so I can't get in there. But it's a great thing for the city. And when I announce next year or something that we're going to be the site of the new National Comic Book Museum, it'll be even greater. Don't leak that to anybody. But why do you go to anybody go to Cleveland? Why do you go to Cleveland as a tourist? Rock and Roll Museum, right? Yes, it's great. I would go to Cleveland just to see that. Well, what if we have the comic book museum? People come here just to see it. And we can keep Comic-Con, which seemed to me in the mayor's debate, the basic aim of city government was how to keep Comic-Con. So we will figure out how to do it. It was like, several of the candidates said, "Oh, we got to keep Comic-Con. We got to keep Comic-Con." As if, I don't know, that's all we do here. Yes, Dean. In this vein.
In that vein. No, this is something we probably went into yesterday, but besides keeping Comic-Con, what are the chief goals that you're looking for from your new planning director? What are the top priorities you see?
Well, thanks. I think it's it's in the title of his job, planning and neighborhood restoration. Which paper, by the way, figured out that spelled out planner? Because we didn't even know that when we did it. Who had voice? If you use an acronym and use the PL from planning, it spells out planner. Without anyway. That is, we're going to focus our attention on neighborhood revitalization and all that, and that means so many things, and we're putting that all as a central part of the new department. I mean, it means, are we pedestrian friendly? Are we Can you bike around? Are we helping small business exist? What are the design standards? Do we have affordable housing? Do we have public transit? All these are part of what neighborhood revitalization should mean. And that's we're going to take elements, I think, of 14 different departments and put them in that department and make it the central feature. The key mission of a Department of Development Services is to give a permit. We're going to change that. The key thing is to have a livable community. And the permit will follow if people can add to that. So I think that's what, and I mean, I've been at several planning groups, as I said, I think earlier, just the last couple of days, and they're very excited that we're going to put the things that they talk about at every meeting front and center. And there's going to be a participatory part of that Bill Fulton and I will participate in it. By the way, allied with that, and it got the substance got lost in a little bit of the politics. I had asked for a new, what we called incubator for civic initiatives and a new civic imagination, and that was funded. And that's going to be directed by another very incredibly national, even internationally renowned person. He happens to be at UCSD now, Teddy Cruz. He's a professor of urban architecture. And he has every national, international award and prize for excellence and creative thought in neighborhood architecture. And he's going to lead the effort for in this new creativity and going, breaking through silos. And so he and Teddy Cruz and Bill Fulton and Civic San Diego will all be working together to revitalize neighborhoods in really incredibly new ways. I was at North Park Main Street today, and every issue they raised that they were trying to do fits exactly in with what Bill Fulton and I and Graham and Teddy had been talking about. I mean, and as I said, we're going to try to facilitate what you do, not be an obstacle to what you do. I mean, for example, they say, well, how are we going to get a consultant to help us do this? I said, well, that's part of the resources that we have now to help you do that. And so people are pretty excited about that. It happens, the political and the economic sort of strands come together here, and that we have reached as a city the limits really of our suburban sprawl, communities connected by freeways, which got out of the kind of neighborhood or the city of villages that the general plan calls for. We've reached that limit virtually anyway. So people have to look at urban revitalization as key, and it happens to fit in with exactly what I think anyway. So it's a fortuitous thing that the economic and the political have sort of come together. We got to do this, and that's what's going to keep us constantly being on the innovative edge where people want to be and people want to be part of.
One other question. Regarding the city attorney, previously he says, oh, well, I try to call the mayor, but he never returns my calls or whatever. A, is that true? And B, if you did get a call from him on this, what would you tell him?
But let me first say that, I mean, some of the media and I think the attorney want to make this a personality thing, it's a personal spat. It is not. I don't have any problems with Jan as a person, or even that we're in different parties. That doesn't matter. What matter, and because what is going on here is it goes on in any big city that has an elected attorney. I mean, it's institutional. It's built into the system that if you have an elected attorney, you're going to have problems with a strong mayor because they have different roles, and whoever set up, or the people who went into thinking through the strong mayor form did not think that through enough, and we may have to have some charter changes in the future. I mean, last time I talked with Jan, he said, maybe the mayor needs his own attorney, and he was willing, to talk about that and to think about it. And the council does too. I mean, every legislative body has a legislative council. I mean, why doesn't our city council, and why doesn't the mayor? Virtually, every, the White House and every executive has their own attorney. So it's built in that if you have an elected attorney who is responsible to the public, there's always not a confusion, but an ambiguity of roles. Am I the client? Is the council the client? Who's the client? And I personally, I think that he has gone too far into defining me out as a client. Now, if any of you couldn't talk, if your attorney couldn't keep what you talked about confidential, do you talk to them? He talks to the press. How can I talk to him? I mean, until he says this is a privileged communication, then what am I going to say to him? So, but there's an institutional root of all this that has to be settled either by a charter change or we work out some. And as he said, I'm willing to work with you on somewhere where you have your own legal advice if that's what you need. But there's still, and I think he has to assure the council and the mayor that when he has discussions with us and when he issues opinions, they are privileged. The memo that you refer to, Dorian, it's a public memo. He's saying, he's giving me advice. That's not the way attorney operates. I haven't met one attorney that I can run into or a judge who will say they can't believe that he would say something like that, or he would write an editorial castigating his client. I mean, that's not how attorneys work. So, until we figure out a way out of the institutional issues, it's not personal. It's not. We're going to have some problems, and it's not good for the city. I wish we were not in this situation. I mean, that's not something I relish or like. And it shows in this bond thing that it's going to be on the city council agenda next week. Federal laws require that the top two officials of a corporation, whether it be public or private, in the wake of scandals and other things that have occurred, attest to the legality and the accuracy of the data. We had problems here in San Diego, right? So both the city attorney and myself have to sign based on our own reading and discussion of the bond issue that we attest to its legality and its accuracy. And there's a whole process that the city has set up in the wake of all the scandals. We had to do that. I met where I'm required to meet with all the those who participated in the putting together their bond issue, to read all the statements, to question them, to ask questions, to make sure I understand it. I have to test that I understood it. And so I went through that process, and the city attorney went through that process. And yet he brings up that something completely outside what that process occurs. He said, I can't attest to what the mayor's doing. Well, that's not what the bond issue required. He's supposed to attest the accuracy of the information in the bond issue. Well, what does that do? If any of you write articles on that he's done this and I had to answer him and he's not attesting to what I do, and then the Wall Street Journal picks it up or Comedy Central picks it up, all of a sudden we're run by the sea again. And who's going to buy our bonds? So I think it's destructive of him to pursue it in that way. I went through the process, and I signed the document that attested to my understanding of the bond issue. He did the same thing, but then he brought up this extraneous thing that, I don't know what the mayor's doing. Well, he doesn't need to know what I'm doing, except if I have a contract that he has to attest to the legality of, or I have a resolution that goes through the city council that he has to attest to the legality of. He thinks he wants it. He needs to know how I came to that policy decision. Well, that's not his role. And I mean, I give to my lawyers. Is this legal? It's a document. They don't know the process that I went through to get there, or the policy issues. Is it legal? He won't just answer that question.
There's on a different note, somewhat. There was a lawsuit in Golden Hill in South Park about a maintenance assessment district that was settled quite a few years ago, and refunds were supposed to be given out. by the time the court case went through, it was past the 4-year statute of limitations. So where I believe 41 claims have been given out for a total of like $46,000, I believe. The city also sued the engineers, the company that did the engineers report, and got $120,000 from that. In downtown, there was I think it was 30 million overcharge in assessments that still haven't been refunded, and again, only a couple dozen people might have gotten refunds. I was curious if you knew about it, and if so, if there's a way to inform these people that obviously, I mean, the city made money off of this, and
Well, I don't know in any detail. I heard some vague things, or I read in your stuff maybe. I'll have to look into it, and I mean, I think we should be fair and honest, and even if a statute of limitations has been passed, we can still give the refunds, and if that's recalled for, we should do it. So if you have anything, or I could do that's what I'm going to do on you, Dorian. I'm going to do a Public Records Act on you. He keeps 10 people going in this bureaucracy but just by himself. But so I need to know the data you have.
And what's the status on those 9 that I'm waiting for?
We've depublished the Public Records Act. I guess Irene says I have to take a last question.
On there's been a few things. I mean, you obviously have a different philosophy than the previous mayor, and he wanted to privatize a lot of stuff and have private companies do city services through managed competition. You obviously have some serious doubts about managed competition, and you also are now going to start this process of possibly looking at taking the ambulance contract in-house, and then also the taxi cab study that was approved in the budget also looks at maybe having the city take over the management of how these taxi cab drivers are operating. Can you talk a little bit about your reasoning in trying to basically take the cities and assuming the roles and those things?
Yeah, well, on the other hand, I want to have TMD get the city out of, and I'm ready to privatize city attorney's office. So I'm all for managed comp. Look, you do the thing that seems to be most effective and responsive to the public in a given situation. So in the ones we've looked at, I don't see much value in outsourcing them. I want to look at, as a lot of cities do, they do their own EMT, they do their own ambulance service. Is that cheaper? Is that better service? That's what I got to look at. I don't know. I don't have any preconceived outcome, but I want to see the study. During the election campaign, I got a lot of complaints from taxi drivers, taxi owners, consumers, taxi riders about the state of the taxi system. And I looked at it and thought, well, let's regulate it ourselves. We pay, this is not insourcing or outsourcing. It's a little different issue. I mean, we pay another government agency to regulate. And I didn't see that very effective. I mean, if cab owners who don't drive their own cabs are charging a great amount to lease the cabs and then don't bother to put that money into safety or cleanliness, there's something wrong with the regulation that's going on there. And people complain about the safety and cleanliness of cabs. Drivers complain about not being able to make enough money the way the system is set up. I thought I had an obligation to look at it. And it's not going to cost us any more or less to regulate the system than MTS did. I mean, we paid to have them do it. So we'll just use that money and do it ourselves. And then I could look at, there's certain issues that I have I'll say a philosophy about that. For example, the cab drivers under the existing regulations are considered to be independent contractors. I think they should be considered hired employees. That gives them certain rights under National Labor Relations Act that they don't have as independent contractors. For example, the right to organize into a union. As you might know, I believe in that. So I would like to change that context. That's just one area. and then that leads to a whole lot of other things. I mean, it leads to, I mean, you have to pay then if they're decent hourly wages and et cetera, et cetera. Right now, they're not subject to any of that. They're not subject to any of those laws about benefits and as an independent contractor. So, you know, if there's places to privatize, I'll recommend we do it. If there's places to in-house it, I'll recommend to do it. I mean, it just depends on the situation. So I don't think it's overly ideological into that.
Last question.
Yeah.
I just had one follow-on
Sure.
to that question about the data processing services. You know, I know that they're kind of winding down now, but how do you feel about the privatization of that?
I just haven't. I don't know the comparison. I will tell you, I'm not exactly happy with I don't know how the in-house IT came about. I mean, we have obviously in-house IT. There's lots of problems with it. I don't know that come from. I don't know the relationship between what the data processing thing and what was left with our IT. I just don't know enough about it. But I don't know if one caused the other, or or what if there was any relationship whatsoever. Our in-house stuff is not doing that good. I mean, we paid millions of dollars for certain systems, and we don't have the expertise to even run them right. That kind of thing. And I don't know if the previous way we had it did that or not. I just, so I'm not happy or unhappy. I just don't know enough about it. Thank you all very much, as always.